NASCAR admits Denny Hamlin jumped the final restart at Richmond. But are there any actual consequences? How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. Hope you're doing well. I promise this is the last time we're going to discuss the final Richmond restart. Did Hamlin jump? Should NASCAR have made the call? All that stuff. We have to do our due diligence, but then I think we'll finally be ready to move on. First, I want to touch on this real quick. A lot of chatter this week about Richmond Raceway's future. Currently, it hosts 2 NASCAR race weekends a year. A lot of folks believe one of those dates could be on the chopping block. The TV ratings for Sunday's Cup Series race are in. Reporter Adam Stern posted, Fox got 3.31 million viewers for Sunday night's NASCAR Cup Series race at Richmond. Last year's race was on cable, no direct comparison, though as Stern notes, the 2022 spring Richmond event was on Fox and that race drew 3.9 million. So this year's race well behind the same event 2 years earlier. Last year, NASCAR also raced on Easter Sunday on Fox at Bristol Dirt, and that event drew about 3.5 million viewers. So objectively speaking, the ratings for Richmond Raceway were down this year. Really, outside of the rain-impacted Daytona 500, Richmond is the first race this season to see year-over-year ratings decreases. NASCAR had been on a pretty good roll the past few weeks. Again, the chatter surrounding Richmond Raceway is that one of its 2 dates could go to a new venue. Just rumors at this point, nothing is confirmed, but I think it's safe to say Fox wasn't too pleased with these ratings because shortly after Adam Stern posted the numbers, Chris Myers tweeted, "Don't expect NASCAR to race on Easter Sunday in the near future or at the LA Coliseum, but you can expect racing in Southern California at a track yet to be determined." No Easter next year. Could we see a Saturday night race? Could NASCAR bake in an extra off weekend in the spring? Still more questions than answers, but the timing of Chris Myers' tweet, as well as the content itself, to me, suggests Richmond will lose a date next year, perhaps the spring date. That seems to be where things are headed. Just rumors, but context is everything. Last night, I listened to the latest episode of Actions Detrimental, Denny Hamlin's podcast. Towards the end of the episode, Hamlin addressed the final restart at Richmond. Denny Hamlin went on to win the race, but TV showed after the fact that the 11 car appeared to jump the restart at least a few yards before the restart zone.
Did you jump the restart?
I went pretty early in the zone. What?
No, I just thought you were going to continue your thought.
No, it's a zone.
That is one of the most uncomfortable silences I've heard in a podcast in a long, long time. Had me checking my watch. That's funny. I viewed that comment as kind of tongue-in-cheek because afterwards Denny Hamlin got more serious and actually admitted that he did go at least a few feet early. He explains that he was looking at Martin Truex Jr.'s car next to him, Joey Logano's car behind him, and was trying to keep them from gaining an advantage.
All I'm doing is looking mirror side, and I'm looking at the left front fender on the 19 car. And at that point, when I see him starting to creep, I'm like, I take off. So I don't see where I'm at in the zone. I concede definitely that it is a few feet early.
I think Denny Hamlin is telling the truth, or at least his truth. Was the 19 creeping towards him? I don't know. Look at the replay. This is on board with Truex. Yeah, maybe a few inches. But I don't know. They look pretty even to me. Then the 11 just takes off. Hamlin's nose is always out in front of the 19s. I don't see a whole lot of gamesmanship from Martin Truex Jr. right there. And Joey Logano, you look at the wider angle, he kind of rolls up to Hamlin's bumper, but well before the restart zone. By the time they're within a few car lengths of the restart zone, Logano is pretty close to Hamlin's bumper. I don't really see him laying back much either. I get it, it's a game of inches. I believe Denny Hamlin when he says in that last clip that he wasn't looking at the restart zone. He still jumped the restart. He still should have been penalized. NASCAR's added additional signage. They've added an orange stripe on the outside wall. They've done everything they can to make sure everyone can see the restart zone. If you weren't looking at it and you jumped early, that's your fault and should have resulted in a penalty, I believe. I do appreciate the peek under the helmet, though. We hear all the time drivers talk about gamesmanship on restarts, guys laying back, trying to gain an advantage. It was interesting to hear Denny Hamlin's perspective. What is he looking at there as they're approaching the start-finish line? His explanation makes a ton of sense. His focus was on the 19 and the 22, the two cars that could have beaten him on the restart. And I want to make this clear. I still don't blame Denny Hamlin for pushing the issue. I'm not calling him a cheater. Hamlin was aggressive. He took a calculated risk. He knew that NASCAR didn't want to make that call. They don't want a late race penalty deciding a 400 lap race. Denny Hamlin knows this. He pushed the issue. That's a veteran move, in my opinion. Now, this does raise a different question. Should drivers and fans expect NASCAR to enforce the rules differently at the end of the race? You see this in other sports sometimes, like basketball. Referees often swallow the whistle in the closing seconds of a tight game. I feel like NASCAR basically did the same thing here, and Vice President of Competition Elton Sawyer basically admitted as much on SiriusXM NASCAR radio this morning.
As I looked at it yesterday, again, multiple times, there's no doubt he rolled early. Again, it's a bang-bang call. It's at the end of the race. We're a live sporting event. We don't have the luxury of a timeout and go to the sideline and review it and make that call. If this happens at lap 10 or 50 or 300, the call could have been different. So I wouldn't, if I'm a competitor, I wouldn't be playing that game every week.
I just wish they'd gotten this call right. NASCAR hates it when penalties decide races, but they've been willing to go there in the past. The double yellow line rule has been a thorn in many drivers' sides over the years. But the restart zone is about as black and white as it gets. There's a literal line. Markers all over the wall. Doesn't matter if it's lap 50 or lap 400. That black and white rule should be enforced the same. And if other drivers are blatantly laying back on a late race restart, don't be afraid to call that too. I do appreciate Elton Sawyer and NASCAR coming out and saying, hey, yeah, Denny Hamlin did go early. I guess we missed it. At least that's better than when they tried to gaslight us Sunday night like we didn't have eyes of our own. I just wish they'd gotten this call right, because what happens now? Do they start cracking down on restart violations? The moment they hand out a penalty, drivers, fans are going to point to this Denny Hamlin no call as evidence of a double standard. But if they allow the gray area to keep getting bigger, eventually drivers are going to push and push and push the envelope, push the boundaries. There'll be no rules at the end of these races. Like I said Sunday night, NASCAR had no issue a week and a half ago at COTA handing out dozens of course-cutting penalties. Shoot, Shane Van Gisbergen had his second place finish rescinded because he cut the S's by a few inches. Black and white rule, no wiggle room, no warning. So what changed at Richmond? I guess it's easier to take away a second place finish than it is a first place finish. It's much harder to make that kind of call, I guess, when a trophy is involved. That's my theory, at least. It's usually bad PR whenever NASCAR has to officiate the ends of these races. All those double yellow line controversies over the years, NASCAR doesn't want that. Shoot, even 2 years ago, the tape disqualification at Pocono, wildly interesting at the time, but it was divisive amongst fans. NASCAR does not want to officiate the ends of these races. I think that's really why they turned a blind eye Sunday night. Maybe they're understaffed, they don't have enough people looking for these things, and they just felt like it wasn't right to change the winner 5, 10, 15 minutes after the checkered. I don't know, but I wish they'd had the nerve to make the correct call Sunday night so that this black and white rule wouldn't become yet another massive gray area. I will say this, I'm not buying any of the conspiracy theories. Sports fans love a good conspiracy theory, and NASCAR fans are no exception. I don't think NASCAR rigged this race because Denny Hamlin's the golden boy of the sport or anything like that. Did y'all miss last week when he called out CEO Jim France by name? And I can point to multiple times over the past 18 months when NASCAR went out of their way to penalize Hamlin. I just mentioned the tape incident at Pocono in 2022. NASCAR didn't have to disqualify Hamlin. They could have kept things quiet and just said, hey, you see that? Don't bring that back here. We're warning you. But they did. They disqualified him. Phoenix last spring, they gave Hamlin a 25-point penalty, if I remember correctly, for comments he made on his podcast. They didn't have to do that. I know most fans don't buy into these kinds of conspiracy theories, but I do see them all over my comment section whenever there's a controversy like this. I don't think that's what's going on here. You can question the consistency of NASCAR officiating all day long. I will be right there with you. But I do not believe modern NASCAR is rigged the way some fans seem to believe. Anyway, I hate to even waste time addressing it, but that's gonna do it for this episode, y'all. What did you make of Elton Sawyer's comments? I guess I appreciate NASCAR being honest. Hell yeah, Hamlin went early, we missed it. But I don't like NASCAR admitting they make calls differently depending on where in the race we're at. Again, we know that happens in just about every other sport, but the difference is those leagues typically don't admit it publicly the way NASCAR just did. Anyway, share your thoughts down in the comment section below. What'd you make of Hamlin's comments? I'll link his full podcast down in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We talk NASCAR every single day here on Out of the Groove. And a huge thank you to my very generous Patreon supporters. More episodes to come later this week. I'll also be streaming live right here on this channel tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. My YouTube buddy, The Iceberg, will join me. We'll be covering a wide variety of hot-button NASCAR topics. Hope to see you all there. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, folks. I'll catch you in the next episode.